London in the year 1600 is a city of 200,000 people. Most of its citizens live in cramped, unsanitary conditions, earning barely enough to survive on the margins of a pre-industrial economy. Thousands of miles away, the Mughal capital of Fatehpur Sikri houses over 500,000 people, making it larger than London and Paris combined. The streets are paved, and the markets are filled with silk, diamonds, and gold. This chart shows the distribution of global wealth in the 16th century. At its peak, the Mughal Empire produced 25% of the entire world's economic output. That single empire was more productive than all of Western Europe combined. This economic engine was overseen by Emperor Akbar the Great. Over the course of 49 years, he transformed a fragile, contested territory into a global superpower using a specific code of institutional design. Akbar's rise was far from guaranteed. He was born in a refugee camp while his father, the second Mughal emperor, was in exile, having been driven out of India by a rival ruler. When his father died in a sudden accident, Akbar became emperor at just 13 years old. He inherited a kingdom that was poorly organized and under threat from every side. He also lacked a formal education. He never learned to read, remaining illiterate throughout his entire life. To manage an empire he couldn't read about, Akbar relied on an extraordinary capacity to observe and synthesize information from others. He built a massive system of advisors, realizing he could govern more effectively by accessing the collective knowledge of his court than by relying on his own. To scale his kingdom into a global power, he implemented a set of sophisticated economic policies that would come to define the Mughal wealth code. In the ancient world, taxation was often a gamble for the state and a death sentence for the poor. Most systems charged farmers a fixed amount every year, regardless of whether the harvest was a success or a failure. This chart illustrates the systemic flaw. A fixed tax during a bad year ruined the farmers. Once the farmers were gone, they couldn't produce for the next season, which eventually bottomed out the state's tax revenue. In the 1570s, Akbar's finance minister, Raja Todar Mal, introduced a revolutionary overhaul called the Dasala system. This graph shows how the Dasala system worked. Instead of a fixed rate, the state measured actual productivity over a 10-year period. Taxes were set based on average yields, proportional to reality. This security allowed farmers to reinvest in their land. The increased productivity meant more revenue flowed into the treasury than ever before. By taxing the productive base gently, Akbar grew the base itself. This is the same logic behind the modern Laffer curve, the idea that excessive tax rates eventually crush the activity that generates the revenue. Most empires of this era were plagued by a hereditary aristocracy. Powerful families accumulated land and influence over generations, eventually challenging the emperor. Akbar countered this with the Mansabdari system. Every official, from generals to administrators, was assigned a specific numerical rank that determined their pay and responsibilities. But there was a critical constraint. These ranks were non-hereditary. When an official died, their rank and the wealth associated with it did not pass to their children. This prevented the formation of a permanent military aristocracy. It meant that every generation of the Mughal elite had to earn their position through their own performance and loyalty to the crown. Akbar built a system where results determined status. In his empire, the moment loyalty became something you inherited, it lost its value. While Europe was being torn apart by religious wars and the expulsion of minorities, the Mughal Empire occupied the center of the world's most valuable trade routes, from Chinese silk to Indonesian spices. Akbar made the radical decision to abolish the jizya, the tax on non-Muslims, and declared that all religions were welcome. Hindus, Christians, and Zoroastrians were all given the right to worship and trade freely. This wasn't just a moral stance. It was a pragmatic economic policy. Trade requires trust, and Akbar realized that a state that protects all merchants, regardless of their background, becomes the most attractive destination for global capital. Merchants from across the globe flocked to Mughal ports like Surat, bringing with them the lucrative textile and spice trades, fueling an explosion of wealth that was protected by imperial policy. This policy of openness acted as a powerful economic lever. By making his territory the safest place for diverse merchants to do business, Akbar captured the trade flows that drove the world's GDP. Through these systems, India became the gravitational hub of the global economy. Here, the silk, spice, and cotton routes all converged. Akbar understood a vital rule of trade. You don't need to control the ends of a route, just the hub everything passes through. This systemic dominance is what allowed a single empire to produce 25% of the world's wealth. At the end of his life, the illiterate refugee who inherited a broken kingdom had become the architect of the most sophisticated wealth system of the 16th century. He didn't build this empire through micromanagement. He built it by designing an autonomous engine of incentives that rewarded productivity and performance. The lesson for modern leaders remains the same. True wealth is generated by building systems that prioritize productivity over extraction and results over inheritance. Akbar never learned to read, yet he governed nearly a quarter of the world's wealth through systems, capable people, and clear principles. The empire he built endured for another 150 years before declining from the same forces that have ended many great powers: rigidity, failure to adapt, and believing inherited power guaranteed lasting success. At its peak, the Mughal Empire achieved something few nations or businesses ever do: a growing economy, a thriving middle class, and a stable leadership, all at once. That is the Akbar Wealth Code. I'm the Money Chronicle, uncovering the wealth lessons history left behind. Subscribe because history still teaches strategies that many business schools never do.